Now, you're going to listen to a conversation that took place in 1959 about beings that live under the surface of the earth and evidence about them. You're hearing beeps because this was a tapped phone conversation, allegedly, and recently declassified.
They're out in Amherst, Wisconsin. This is the first time that people have had the opportunity of hearing Richard Shaver, and we're finding out as much as possible about the Darrows and the Taros. And I'd like to take just a moment to talk about one of our sponsors. Both of these gentlemen are out in Amherst, Wisconsin. We have found from time to time that their voices faded out a little bit, but if you'll stick with us, I think we'll have a very interesting discussion. This is the only way we can talk to these two gentlemen is by telephone.
Can you hear us well now?
Yes, is this Richard Shaver again?
Oh, this is Ray Palmer. I'll give Richard back to you.
All right, thanks very much, Ray.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello?
Yes, we're having a little difficulty with this line.
Richard, I wanted to ask you something. As I recall, one of your first modes of communication with these beings who live underground was through a sound produced by the flame on your welding torch. Do I remember that correctly?
Yes, it was, I attributed my sensitivity to the field in the welding gun I was using.
I see. How did this come over? Was it a sound that you could hear with your ears when the flame of the torch was in operation?
It's a magnetic gun with a powerful solenoid.
Yes.
And when you press the trigger, I noticed when I pressed the trigger, I could hear voices, many in the distance.
Yes.
And that sensitivity increased day by day. I figured that the strong field was stripping the insulation from the nerves of my head.
I see.
Because I held it right close to my head. And that's the way I think I became sensitive when it first began at that place.
Well, did that happen whenever you had the welding torch in operation and the flame was working?
At that time.
Was it possible for anyone else to hear a sound from the flame of your torch?
I never tried.
You never really knew if someone else heard that then?
No, I didn't.
Uh-huh. Well, I wanted to ask you several other things about the Darrows. As you have said to John shortly, there are some that are good and some that are bad.
That's right.
So that I was going to ask you whether they were basically nasty. But according to what you say, they're equally good and bad.
Well, yes, there is an inverted personality, rather common down there, and it's an old cult, the demonist cult.
Yes.
They raise them that way.
I see.
Children.
Do you have any idea what the population quantity or the number of the population of the Darrows is at the present time?
It's not very many, something like 100,000 is the way I get it.
About 100,000. And these underground sort of caverns or layer on layer that you described that are inhabited by the Darrows, are they concentrated in any particular areas under the earth?
Well, there is a pattern to them, but it's too complicated to go into. They're practically worldwide.
Do they go under the oceans?
Some of them do. There are passages under the ocean, yes.
I was very concerned about one thing I wanted to ask you, whether there are any caverns located under the city of New York.
As far as I know, there are. Wherever the rock is old and solid,
yes,
you'll find them.
Well, we have some very solid granite rock under the island of Manhattan that has made it possible for these huge buildings to be built.
Well, I should say that we're about 200 watts rays listening to you right now.
I beg pardon?
I should say that we're about 200 watts rays listening to you right now.
Yes. Oh, you mean the ones that are right in this area?
That's right.
Uh-huh. Well, do they ever, to your knowledge, come through under a place like Grand Central Station, for example, in these very deep underground passageways?
Yes, they have connections with the surface.
Uh-huh.
But they're very secret. It's a very secret group, very exclusive group.
Yes. Do you know whether they ever come out into the subway tunnels of the city?
I think so.
You do? Has that happened recently, do you know?
All the time.
All the time?
They have to have a source of supply. They have to buy food.
I don't follow you on that.
They must buy food.
Oh, you mean they come up into the city to buy food?
That's right.
I see. Do you mean they don't produce any of their food down below? I didn't know that.
Oh, they do produce a little in hydroponics, but not enough.
I see. I wanted to ask you where the largest concentration was. Is it here under the United States? Are they the greatest amount of them, or are they equally spread?
Well, they're pretty thinly spread. They keep a watch over every important center, mainly to ward off any threat to their dominance.
You say that there were approximately about 100,000 of them at the present time.
That's right.
Would be under New York City, for example, would be a very small portion, a very small part of that 100,000. In other words, we just have a local group here. We wouldn't have a large concentration here then.
Well, you'd be surprised.
Can't you tell us about that, or is this a secret?
Well, there's no one man can know too much about it. It's a very complicated and devious thing.
Yes.
You can know a little, but you can't know very much.
I want to ask you, are there any of them under Washington, D.C.?
Oh, yes.
And do they have to come up into the city and to Washington, D.C. to get food supplies too?
I wouldn't know.
You don't know about that,
I would say it was only in the port.
Can you tell me, Richard, about the heat underground? Are they used to the high temperatures down below? Pardon?
There's very little high temperature.
Oh, there's very little high temperature?
It runs between 50 and 60.
Well, that doesn't sound too bad.
Oh, it's quite pleasant.
And then I wanted to ask you about children. Do they have children there now?
Well, very few.
Very few.
Children are frowned on.
Just a moment.
I wonder if you could give us a couple of reasons why you believe so firmly now that the Shaver mysteries are based on the fact, not fiction.
Well, I can start out with the initial reason. I visited Mr. Shaver in Pennsylvania. I wanted to hear his voices, and I did.
When was this, sir?
This was in
Before the 50s.
Well, yes, it was about 46, early 46.
Now, I'd like to take this step by step, right? You tell me now that you visited Richard Shaver in Pennsylvania and you heard the voices?
That's right.
Well, Mr. Palmer, after in other words, now that you had this experience, you heard these voices, they told you something that happened 4 miles away from Shaver's home and 4 miles down.
Yes.
I can readily appreciate the fact that possibly some of our listeners may be a little confused at this time because the quality of this broadcast certainly is not top this morning, but we've had a little difficulty as far as our connection is concerned. But we hope that you'll bear with us and listen because I think that this will be extremely interesting to all of our listeners, and I can assure you that this is the very first time that anybody has ever had the opportunity of interviewing Richard Shaver on radio or television. This is the first time, and we're very grateful to Ray Palmer, who made this possible. I'm going to have Ellery Lanier talk to you now, Ray. Just a moment, please.
I wanted to ask you, I can't recall at the moment, what was the name of the energy that was used by the Darrows? Can you refresh my memory on that?
Well, there's several energies. Maybe Richard himself can tell you more about the energies.
Yes.
Do you want to talk to him about this? He seems anxious to tell you.
Surely.
Their main name for the energies they used was Ulegra. I suspect that our word electric came from that word Ulegra.
How would I spell that?
Ulegra.
Ulegra. And you say that was something similar to electricity?
Well, they used a magnetic flow that is not like our electric.
Yes.
It's more similar to the electric generated by the body cells.
Oh, you mean sort of a living organic electricity?
That's right. And almost all their machinery was operated with some variation of that current because it is not healthy to use anything else.
Richard, there is something I think you can enlighten me about. Within the confines of propriety, if you understand what I mean by that. I recall in one account of the life underground, there was a means by which a human being could be dipped into a large glass tank of a certain kind of fluid, which had certain vibrations running through this fluid. And this was used occasionally to test a couple who were contemplating marriage to see whether their vibrations were simultaneous. Is that the same type of energy you were referring to? Was that the Ulegra energy?
Well, that particular incident was largely invention. I don't know too much about it. You must remember, I've had an awful fund of information run through my head, and I couldn't retain all of it.
I see.
And some pictures like that were very clear in my mind, but I didn't really understand what they meant.
I understand.
It's very hard to follow elder thought because it's much superior to ours.
I see. Richard, can you tell the listeners what type of weapons the Darrows used?
Type of what?
Yes, I don't recall. Did they have any specific type of weapon that they used in attacking, let's say, when there was a struggle between the good and the bad Darrows?
Well, their main weapon is a superimposition of a destructive energy upon their common conductive ray, called the Pennant ray.
Did they use a mechanical device for that?
Oh, yes.
Another question, Richard. is there any way in which we can know whether they are digging any or creating any further caverns underground at the present time?
They're very busy stripping them,
I don't understand. Can you explain that?
taking out.
Oh, you
They're
mean
busy stripping and selling them,
they are removing the caverns?
removing the interiors.
You mean they are deserting the interiors?
Yes, they're taking them out and shipping them out to space.
I see. I didn't follow that. In other words, the Zeros are in effect deserting the underground places where they have been living in.
Well, it's an ancient trade. It's been going on for 1,000 years.
Yes.
Space is looting Earth. We don't know it. It's the whole scheme of it.
Richard, I want to ask you this. You know, our scientists today in research and in the development of atomic weapons and in spacecraft are making some very important discoveries. And assuming that your account is accurate, it is true. Assuming that it is true, would any of the discoveries that our scientists are making today in any way be a threat to the Zeros, or are they more powerful than we are?
I don't think we could make anything that would threaten them. No, they're not particularly worried.
In other words, we can go right ahead with our development, and they won't try to stop us or interfere with what we are about.
They think they can handle us. Yes.
What about this kidnapping business that I recall? Have they been kidnapping any American citizens recently?
Well, I don't have specific knowledge. I only know that there are a lot of us down there as slaves, but I don't know how long they've been there.
Do you have any idea about how many people are down there as slaves?
No, I wouldn't know that.
You said there are a lot.
Well, in every scene you see, the whole background is slaves doing something.
Well, the slaves, then, would they be half of the population down below?
More than that.
More than that? Is that true?
I would say about 10 to 1.
Really? How do they replenish them? Do they keep kidnapping people all the time?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, I understand that in the ancient times, slaves would produce children and offspring, which the owners would have as future slaves. And is it possible that the Zeros are do that sort of thing with American citizens?
Well, I think the FBI sends them a few now and then.
Would you repeat that, Richard? I didn't quite get that.
I mean, when the FBI tries to investigate them, the agents disappear.
You mean there are FBI agents that have been kidnapped and taken underground?
But they wouldn't.
How can that be possible?
Let's not go into that too far.
All right. Details that you mentioned tonight have brought up a great many questions I wanted to ask you. Now, I take it you've known from Richard Shaver about the existence of Zeros and Zeros for approximately 15 years.
Well, since 1944.
And the Zeros are the ones who want to do us harm, and the Zeros are the ones who are good people.
Well, the Zeros don't particularly want to do us harm. It is one of their pastimes to be devilish, and because of the machinery they have, they are able to do it.
Now, the Zeros are also people who they want to keep their existence not known from us, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And you said they've recently gone into such devilish stunts as tearing a woman into quarters?
This happened in 1946.
Well, the thing that immediately springs to my mind is how have they allowed you and Richard Shaver to go on communicating to the world about their existence for 15 years without doing you some harm?
Well, now here we get into an area where I'm afraid I must startle you again. But they haven't.
You know of no reason for this?
No, I don't mean that they have let us go on.
You mean they have tried to harm you?
They have retaliated, and in very great measure.
In other words, your life and Richard Shaver's life may very well be in danger.
Well, it's hard to say that anything as unimportant as we are in their scheme of things is in danger.
Well, I mean, I think Mr. Shaver mentioned that there may be at least 200 Zeros listening to our conversation tonight. I mean, certainly the headquarters are getting a message that Joe broadcasting about their existence, which they probably wouldn't like at all. Mr. Shaver mentioned something before about the Zeros are shipping their equipment out into outer space by means of sources. I think the equipment he referred to in the Shaver articles were next. Why are they making a mass exodus to space?
Well, I don't believe that either you or Mr. Shaver be sure that that's exactly correctly. I don't think the Zeros or the Zeros are making any exodus. I think they are helpless to make any such an exodus.
You think they're actually bound within the regions where they live?
They are not only bound, but many of them are trying to defend themselves from losing these possessions, and at times very heated battles do go on.
Between who?
Between the invaders from space who are carting this stuff away, and the invaders who wish to retain it.
You mean the invaders know the existence of...
Oh, yes. The Earth is known all through space as the Great Tomb. That is, it is the planet where vast civilizations existed in the future, or in the past, and where all these abandoned machinery, which are almost imperishable in nature, are still in good condition, and those that are not in good condition are extremely valuable as antiques and curios.
Are they taking any of the machinery from the surface of the Earth?
I don't think that they would consider the surface machinery of any value.
In other words, the Darrow's machinery is that much more greater.
Yes, I am inclined to agree with them when I think of my washing machine and various other equipment.
These invaders, in other words, you say that we actually do have, the Earth has been invaded by people from outer space. Do you know where they come from?
Well, it's hard to say where they come from because...
I mean, is it in our solar system?
What?
Is it in our solar system?
I think not. I think it's very further than that.
From another galaxy?
Possible. I'm inclined to think, too, that it may even be from what we may facetiously term another dimension.
A fourth dimension?
Well, not a fourth, but let us say a sort of parallel universe.
In other words, a coexisting universe.
Shaver doesn't agree with me at all.
Oh, dispute you on this.
I'm only giving you a theory of mine.
I was wondering about the point that Mr. Shaver went into, that sometimes the Darrows come up to the surface, and one of their reasons was to forage for food.
Yes?
Now, do these beings, which seem to be extremely malevolent but extremely powerful, actually need food? I mean, they can't manufacture their own, or do they need food?
Well, you must understand the picture down there. There are the powerful ones who are the rulers who enslave all the rest, and who deny them all of the wonderful things which they keep to themselves.
So these are derelict Darrows.
Yes. And so the derelicts must sneak out and even forage for such things as firewood.
They go out for firewood?
Yes.
You mean in a civilization of fantastic machinery, they actually need firewood?
Well, let us compare it with the feudal lords who lived in magnificence in their castles, whereas their slaves just outside the moat did have to forage for roots and branches and things like that, and animal dung and so on to burn to keep warm.
I mean, 4 miles underneath the surface of the Earth, you actually need firewood to keep warm?
Well, let us put it this way. 4 miles is not a specific distance.
Thank you very, very much, and extend my thanks to